Hello, hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're watching from. Welcome to Tizoguitar. If you're new here, my name is Tyler Griffiths. I go by Tizo, and this channel is all about guitar, but with a special focus on R&B music. Hopefully, you guys are excited by the topic of today's lesson. I'm going to be talking all about the number system and how we can use that to our benefit as musicians in general, but especially as guitarists. Real quick, a few orders of business. I do teach private lessons. That's my main thing that I do here, but I also love to teach on YouTube. So if anything that I go over today is a little bit too complicated, or you're feeling like you need someone to help you and come alongside you as you're working on your guitar journey, feel free to reach out to me. I can be reached at tizoguitar@gmail.com. Also, if anything that you learn in this stream is helpful to you and you get a lot of value out of it, please show your support any way you can. The easiest way is to like the video, subscribe if you haven't already, and click that little bell so that you're notified whenever I go live or drop a new video. That would greatly help, and it costs nothing. If you'd like to support financially, you could always check out my Patreon, which has some tabs for all of my lessons. It has advice for beginner and intermediate guitarists. You can find that at patreon.com/tizoguitar. All right. And I also offer a R&B chord library, which is an ebook that has a ton of different voicings for some of the most common chords in R&B. It'll show you how to play all those shapes with the root on the low E string, A string, and D string, and also has a few sample progressions for you to get started with in using those shapes. All right. So anyway, all that's out of the way. Greatly appreciate you being here, and I will go ahead and get started. So let's talk the number system. So some of you may have been exposed to the number system in the past. Maybe you already have a decent grip of it. But what I wanted to do today is kind of talk about the benefits of the number system, as well as how we can go about using that in our guitar playing. So some things I want to talk about as far as advantages of the number system. The main advantage of the number system is being able to play whatever you know on guitar in any key. Super, super important. One of the things that I kind of ran into struggles with as kind of a beginner or getting into intermediate was I was learning songs that had cool chord changes and stuff like that, but I couldn't transfer that outside of the key. So whatever song I learned it for, that was the only time I could play that specific riff or that specific line. And it's kind of limiting that way. You want to be able to play in any context. So maybe if you're someone who gets to play with others, then if they're doing it in, something that that you learned for one song, you can apply to the key of G major or C major or whatever it may be, and not have that limitation of, oh, I only know it in one spot. Sorry, guys. But even if you're just someone who plays alone and for fun, it's greatly liberating to be able to play in any key. So let me show you a few things about that in just a second. But also the advantage if you are playing with other people is, hold on one second. It is really hot in here. Let's get that fan going. Okay, so yet another advantage is if you're playing with other musicians, if you're fortunate enough to have access to a band or some jam sessions, the number system allows you to quickly communicate what's going on. So if someone wants to kind of catch you up to speed really quickly, oh, we're going to do a little jam. We're doing a 2-5-1 in C major. You definitely want to be someone who knows what that 2, 5, and 1 mean, and that way you can kind of quickly jump in and match what people are doing. One of the things I enjoy watching are those videos where the music director or the worship leader at a church is calling out chord changes on the fly, because then it's like, oh, you really have to be paying attention, right? They're saying, all right, we're going to go to the 4. All right, we're going to hang on the 5 for a little bit. Then we're going to go 2-5-1, go, and that kind of stuff can sound like complete gibberish or like it's algebra if you have no idea what's going on. But for someone who spent time learning the number system, that'll make immediate sense to you, and you can really go quickly. You'll be able to adapt really quickly to changes, which is a valuable skill. And the third thing, I got to make sure I keep my notes so I stay on topic. But the third thing is that you'll be able to remember some of the non-typical things. Like maybe you might find a chord change or riff that sounds really cool and interesting, but it doesn't follow a pattern that you can easily transpose to another key. And in this case, knowing what's going on in terms of the number system will allow you to say, oh, that shape is, or that movement is a variation of this number. So it might be like a 5 minor, or it might be 1 dominant. This might not make any sense to you right now, but by the end of the stream it will, I promise. So we're gonna talk about those things. Now, a few things that you really wanna have under your belt before you start messing around with the number system, okay? Number one, you wanna know the notes on the low E string, and preferably the low E string and the A string. So what I mean by that, if we're going down, right, open should be E, fret 1 on the low E string is F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, B, C, and so on and so forth, being able to go all the way down, and the notes all repeat, all the open notes repeat on fret 12, okay, so it just starts over. You want to know all those notes from open to fret 12 at least. Then you want to know all the notes from open to fret 12 on your A string. So it'll be A sharp, B, C, C sharp, D, E, F. Oh, I skipped one. D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, and back to A. All right. And not just knowing them in terms of the sharps that go in between the natural notes, but also for flats. So, you know, open to be E, F, G flat, G, A flat, so on and so forth. You want to know those notes, all the natural notes, all the sharp notes, and all the flat notes, okay? That's one thing you want to make sure you have really solid. The next thing, you want to know the major scale formula. So what that is, it's a sequence of whole steps and half steps. I covered it in the last live stream as well, but it's a sequence of whole steps and half steps that make up the major scale. All right, so you want to be familiar with that. I'll briefly go over that in a second. You also want to know all of your chord qualities. You want to know what the chord qualities are supposed to be for each number, okay? And I'm going to be showing you what that is later too. But chord quality is just a name for saying, is the chord minor? Is it major? Is it diminished? Is it a dominant chord? So on and so forth. All those different things are chord qualities. And those will really tell you what a chord is supposed to be based off of its position in the number system, okay? And then last but not least, you wanna have at least one, but of course, more is better, 1 to 2 shapes of every chord quality that you're going to be using. So you want to know a couple different shapes for major chords, a couple different shapes for minor chords, diminished. When it goes to like 7th chords, when we start adding an extra note to each of our basic triads, we get into major 7s and minor 7s and all that. You want to know a couple of different shapes for each of those chords, and I'll show you why in just a moment as well. That's a great thing that a good reason to purchase my R&B chord library, because it has 2 to 3 different shapes for every one of those chord voicings. Okay, so I want you to grab your guitar. I want you to do this along with me. We're gonna take a look at this. Let's start with the major scale. So, one second. Let me make sure I'm keeping an eye on chat. Okay. Oh, if you have any questions, feel free to drop it in chat, and I'll be happy to answer them if I know the answer. Just try to stick to the topic at hand. And then after I'm done covering today's material, you can ask whatever question you want to ask about anything, okay? Alrighty, so let's get started. So key to the number system is knowing your major scale. So I'm gonna start on our low E string, okay? The formula for that is whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. A whole step is a 2 fret jump. So if I go from 3 to 5, that's a whole step. Let's get some more volume. If I go from 3 to 1, that's also a whole step. So wherever you jump and you skip a fret in between, you've moved a whole step. Now, any fret right next to each other, so 3 to 4 is a half step, as well as 3 to 2. So whenever you're going to the fret next door, you traveled a half step. Whenever you go to a fret that is 2 frets away in either direction, is a whole step. All right, for our sake, we're just gonna be traveling down the fretboard, so towards the body of the guitar, for all of our whole steps and half steps. So let's start on the note G. We're on the 3rd fret of our low E string, that's the note G. Now if we go apply that major scale formula, we go whole step to fret 5, that is the note A. We go another whole step, that's the note B. We go a half step now to fret 8, it's the note C. We go whole step to D, whole step to fret 12, that's an E. Whole step to fret 14, that's an F sharp. And half step brings us back to the root, okay? So before you get into any of the number system stuff, you should be able to do that. Basically travel whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. And starting anywhere up here. You can start from open if you want to do that, or you can start from fret 1. But wherever you are, you have to be able to build that number or that major scale off of any starting note, all right? And ideally, you want to be able to do that on both the low E string and the A string. The pattern remains the same. The only thing is that you want to make sure you know which notes you're landing on, okay? But spend some time doing that, and then what you want to do is you want to give each of those notes a number. So in the major scale and most scales in general, you're going to have 7 notes. The only difference, the only note that's different, or the only scale that's different than that would be like the pentatonic scale, which has 5 notes. So each of these notes gets a number. So when we're starting on that first note, fret 3, that note G, that would be the 1. On the 5th fret, that would be the 2. That's our A note. On the 7th fret, that would be the 3. That is our B note. On the 8th fret, that would be the 4, which is our C note. On the 10th fret, that would be our 5, which is a D note. On the 12th fret, that would be the 6, which is our E note. On fret 14, that would be the 7, which is an F sharp. And then we go back to the 1 on fret 15. Okay. So now, so far what we've done is we've established our major scale formula. We've laid it out, right? And now we've numbered each of those. So we got to think about it in terms of numbers now. So we're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and back to 1. Okay, so the next step, now we want to actually apply that number system. And what we're going to do is we're going to add certain chord qualities. So let's jump over, just so we can kind of take stock of what we've done. We're going to jump over to a little Word document that I have laid out. So we've applied our formula, right? So let's write in the actual notes that we did. We did, started on G. We went to A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, okay? Those are our 7 notes. Now what we would do, when you see this term here, diatonic chords, all that means is that these are the chords that you would expect to see in a key, in a major key, all right? So what we do is we take each of these and we just write them out in our numbers. So 2 is A, B, C, D, E, and F sharp. Okay, so now the chord qualities that we attach follows this pattern. 1, 4, and 5 are going to be major chords. All right, and 2, 3, and 6 are going to be minor chords. And the only one that's different is the 7, which ends up being a diminished chord. Okay, so that is the formula that you would start with. Whenever you, after you lay out your major scale, you give numbers to each of the notes, and then you would give these chord qualities, whether they're major, minor, or diminished, would be attached to each of these here. All right, so this is the basics of the number system right here. If we're talking about saying we're playing a song in the key of G major, these are the chords that we would expect to see. And now if we were doing a progression, like so, let's see here, let me put that down. If we were doing a progression in the key of G major, let's say we wanted to do G major, then C major, and then D major. All right, that's our progression. What we've done is we've taken the chords, we've taken the 1 chord, which is G, we've taken the 4 chord, which is C major, and we're taking the 5 chord, which is D major. So how we would communicate that in terms of the number system, we would say that's a 1, 4, 5 progression. 1, 4, 5. Okay? And now what that does is, if we think about it in terms of the number system, we can always move that around, especially if we know what the movements look like, how to get from the 1 to the 4 and the 4 to the 5. We just shift that up, so we could play a 1, 4, 5 in C, moving everything up to fret 8 as our starting point. So if you ever have to play a 1, 4, 5 in a different context, you can always just move it around, okay? Sometimes it's not as simple as just sliding it up and making everything the same. Sometimes you're gonna have to move around and use different chord voicings for that shape. So it's not really just enough to know that quick movement, because especially if you want to start one that's way down here and you run out of room, whatever it may be, you want to make sure that you can move it around based off of the chords being used, not just the movement of your hands, if that makes sense. All right, so that is the basic part, but now we went over and we talked about how the 1, the 4, and the 5, the first, fourth, and fifth notes all get major chords. The second, third, and sixth notes, we attach minor chords to those, and the seventh gets the diminished. But what we can also do is apply that to different extended chords as well. So like not just seventh chords, like minor sevenths and major sevenths, but also major ninths, major 11ths, and minor 7 flat 5s, and all that stuff. We can still work with that in the context of the number system. So let me show you what that looks like. Pull that up. There we go. Okay, so just like we can attach those major chords, any major chord will work in the same place. There's only one thing that's a little bit different, and that's when it comes to seventh chords. So let me show you. G major 7 would work here. A minor 7, just gonna abbreviate to save time. B minor 7, that works there. C major 7 works there. Now the 5 chord and the 7 chord are where it gets a little bit different. The 5 chord doesn't turn into a major 7 chord, it turns into a dominant 7 chord. So you would call that D7, or you might have seen 7 chords before. That's what it means, it's a dominant 7 chord. There's reasons for that. I won't get into it during today's stream, but just know that the 5 chord becomes a dominant chord when you start applying 7th chords to it. E minor becomes E minor 7, and F sharp diminished becomes minor 7, flat 5. Okay, so those are the only two departures from the typical, oh, just add a 7 to it, or just add a 9 to it, or whatever it is. But these still fulfill the same thing. So if you see a D7 and you're in the key of G, it's still the 5 chord. It's just a different thing. We're not just doing straight majors or minors anymore. We're now adding in the 7th. So now we're doing 4 note chords instead of 3. All right. I know this might seem a little complicated. I'm gonna try to make it a little bit easier to understand. And you don't need to have this level of understanding right away. It's more so, can you build that major scale on one string? Can you attach the right chord qualities to it? And then can you use that knowledge to play songs that you already know in different keys? That's the goal. All right, so let me take a look, check in chat. We're looking good. Alrighty. So one other thing, so I talked about how you can use that to be able to learn anything in any key, right? But one thing that the main thing, honestly, that I use the number system on, more so than just playing something in a different key, is memorizing really cool chord changes and movements. So what I showed you, what I broke down in that key of G, was what we call the diatonic chords. Those are the chords that you would expect to see in a progression. But oftentimes, and especially in R&B music, or jazz or neo-soul, we actually use chords that are outside the key. So we would call those non-diatonic chords in order to add interesting flavors and textures to our chord progressions. So, for instance, there's a really cool chord progression that I like. It goes a little something like this. So it's starting off on a major 9. There's some really extended chords in this progression, but it goes from major 9 to a 7 sharp 9 chord to a minor 7 Then it has a little walk down, and then it goes to a dominant 7 chord. Okay, so a little bit together. And I'm sure you've probably heard that. If you listen to R&B music, you've heard that type of chord progression before. But when I break it down in terms of the number system, this is an F major 9, which, by the way, we're in the key of C for this. So F major 9 would be some version of the 4 chord. So it goes 4. Now this note has its root on the note E, which is the 3rd note in the key of C major. So what we're doing here is we're doing a dominant 3 chord. And if you remember, the 3 chord is supposed to be minor in most cases. So if you're doing a diatonic or a standard 3 chord, it would be a major. So it would be, but you can tell it doesn't sound as good, right? That just sounds really dissonant and kind of weird. So what they do there is we make that little rule break where we're not doing a major chord, we're doing a dominant chord for the 3. 3 dominant is a very common rule break, we'll say, or intentional rule break that you'll see in a lot of songs. So we're going 4 chord, we're doing 3 dominant, then we go here. This is A minor, this is A minor 7, and that is normal. So that's a normal 6 chord in the key of C major. So 4, 3 dominant, 6. A little chromatic thing. Okay, so now we're walking down. This chord here is totally not in the key. This is, you could say it's a G sharp minor 7 or an A flat minor 7. Either way, it's only there to give us that little movement. And then we end up on a G minor 7. So if we look at the key of C major, the note G is the 5th note. And normally the 5, or the chord that's built off of the 5 would be a major chord, right? So you would expect to play G major. But for this particular chord progression, we're playing a minor 7. So we call that 5 minor. And now the last chord, this is a C7 or a C dominant 7. And because we're in the key of C major, you would expect it to be a C major chord or a C major 7. But in this particular context, C7 sounds right. All right, so one more time, we got 4, 3, 6, 5 minor, 1 dominant 7, we call that. And that's literally how you would refer to it. So you would still use the number system, and you would just kind of be referring to the root note, because we're going F to E to A to G to C. So all those notes we want to refer to in terms of the number system, and then whatever chord quality happens to be attached to it. If it's the one that you would expect, if it's the diatonic chord quality, you would just call it, like in this case, the A minor 7, you just say it's the 6th chord, just the 6. But if there's any departure from what you would expect, then you would identify what that is. So for this 3, you want to call that 3 dominant so that they know, so other musicians that hear that, they know that we're not just playing a regular major 3. We're switching it up and playing a 3 dominant, okay? So knowing the number system allows you to also memorize those kinds of things, where it's like, all right, if I hear something and I learn it, either learn it by ear or I watch a YouTube video on how to play it, then I want to make sure I memorize how to do that on my own. Like if I want to make my own song that has that kind of movement, I want to memorize the movement in terms of the number system and then just apply it to what I'm doing. So I know, oh, that sound there that I'm hearing, that's that 3 dominant sound, or that's that minor 5 going into the dominant 1. And these things, it could sound like algebra right now to you. I completely understand that. This is something that I've learned over the course of years, not weeks, not days. And so, believe me, it makes it a lot easier to learn things down the road if you really put the time in and make sure you internalize and understand the number system from the ground up. So that's what we're doing kind of here today. Alrighty. If there are no questions, we can go into another cool movement, because why not? The best things have multiple examples, right? Another movement that I was able to learn was from, I think I heard it in a song called Nickel. Yeah, Nickel by Emily Brimlow. But the movement that I thought was really cool was they go from, here, let me just do it in a so let's say your progression is, wake up camera 2. Let's say your progression is diatonic at first. So we're in the key of A flat, we'll say, or in the key of, yeah, A flat works. So we're in the key of A flat, we're doing 1, let's go 5. So that would be a E flat or D sharp. Then we do C sharp, and then we would do G sharp. So now here, one thing that I would change, now you can go, this is a minor 9 chord. So after you're doing, right here, to here, to there, to there. Totally non-diatonic movement we got going on there. So we went from here. So this here would be 5 minor again. Then we'd go to 1 dominant, right? Same movement as we were doing before. So 5 minor. We just happen to be using a minor 9 this time. And then we go here. And then we go here. And that would be that same thing where we're going 4 to 3 dominant. But I think it just sounds really cool, that progression. You can go right back into your diatonic progression. Okay. So that's really fun to play, by the way. But what that does, so now I learned that in terms of the number system. So I can put that wherever I want to on the fretboard. And believe me, it's a very good feeling to have that kind of freedom, to not be locked into just the songs that you learn, or the movements being locked into just one song or one riff that you learned. But be able to really take it anywhere on the fretboard is the goal. Alrighty. So it was a quick one today. I have time for questions if you'd like. If anything was unclear, I'm more than happy to repeat it. Definitely ask your questions now. There's about a 30-second delay between when something pops up in chat and when you'll see me react to it. So want to open the floor now for questions. And I'd love to know too, have you guys, maybe you guys already know some of this stuff about the number system. Interested to know how the number system has helped you, or how you went about learning it when you did. All right, I'll give you just a little bit of time. Let's see if anything that I didn't hit on my notes. Chord qualities. Okay, and then 7th string chord qualities. I guess one thing I can talk about is how do you go about learning this, to get to the level where it's very useful to you and it's practical and it's not so confusing. My personal process for learning things takes a very long time. I was probably at least 10 years into my guitar journey before I ever took this music theory stuff seriously. So what you see today is kind of the result of a lot of repetition. I looked up every video I could find on the number system on YouTube. I did take a few online courses that kind of covered that stuff as well. And I really just challenged myself to not just absorb the material, but actually use it in my practice and in my playing. So if I learned a really cool chord progression, I made sure that I challenged myself to learn it in terms of the number system and then try and play it in at least one other key, maybe 2 or 3 other keys if it's a really simple progression. And not just to the point where I'm manually just moving down the fretboard a little farther and repeating the movements, but like really where I could use completely different chord changes. So where it's not, my hands aren't moving the same pattern every time, but I'm still switching into a different key and using the appropriate chords. And that's where it really comes in handy to know 1, 2, or 3 even different chord shapes for a single chord. So 3 ways to play G major, 3 ways to play A minor, so on and so forth. That stuff's gonna really take you far and give you the freedom to move it around. And then it was just, like I said, just repetition over and over, continuously testing myself, making sure I knew how to find, the 3 chord or the 4 chord or whatever it is in my mind, and then also on the fretboard. So, anywho, I think I've talked you guys' ear off enough. Definitely let me know if you want to learn anything else about this type of material. I do plan on having more live streams about music theory, and then also kind of showing more examples of how we can put it on the fretboard. But today is really just the crash course. So if we want to hit the high bullet points, we're doing know your major scale, know how to play it on one string, and then know what kind of chord qualities, whether major, minor, or diminished, attached to each of those notes on the way down. And then now you can use that. So instead of saying I'm playing G major, C major, D major, you'd say I'm playing 1, 4, 5 in the key of G. And that's what's going to be very useful to you down the road. Alrighty. Once again, if you are interested, I do teach private lessons on Zoom. You can check out the description below, or you can also send an email to tizoguitar@gmail.com. Tizoguitar, just like the name of the channel. I'd be happy to come alongside you and give you pointers and kind of show you where to go in order to progress on your instrument. And then I also, let's see, I'm checking chat too while I'm talking, that's why I'm getting distracted. I also highly recommend just checking out the live streams. I plan on doing at least 2 live streams a week. I'm working on the schedule for that right now. But I plan on having at least one, probably midweek, maybe Tuesday, Wednesday-ish. And then we'll have the usual Saturday live streams at 12 p.m. Eastern, okay? I'll try to keep it as regular as I can. What else? You can follow me on Instagram if you like little clips of me playing, or you're interested in learning or seeing the stuff I work on my guitars. I make pickups, so I like to post little screenshots and stuff of what I'm working on. Follow me on Instagram at tizoguitar. You can follow me at Twitter. Twitter's going to be mainly my announcement page when I get that all set up. So Twitter for announcements, Instagram for little things, little videos and such. And then you can always follow me here. Subscribe if you haven't already. Do all the fun stuff that makes the algorithm love me and push my channel up. Like, share, comment, subscribe, click the bell. You've heard it a million times from every other YouTuber, but it really does help the channel, and it's completely free to you. So, all right, enjoy your weekend. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.